Hello, everybody. Today is August 5th, and we have a very special guest today on Real Talk with Ryan, and it's Michael Trezza from Lithium. And it's funny, I think Michael was one of my first calls when the shutdown happened.
That's
Um,
right.
we we've been talking about ways that businesses could possibly pivot, and suddenly things moved. And so, as we continue our conversations,
Mm.
I thought it'd be amazing to hear Michael's story, his vision for what goes on with clients, why he cares about his clients, what they do, and give an opportunity to share why the community matters to him. So we're excited to have you. Michael, thank you for being here. If anyone has questions, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. I'll pick them up and work them in, and we'll ask some questions, and then we'll stop recording, and you'll have a chance to ask live questions at the end. So with that, Michael, welcome. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for being a guest
Thank
on
you.
Real Talk and joining our esteemed alumni. And I'm going to ask the first question and start it off.
Okay.
Lithium sounds like a battery you're not allowed to carry on the phone on the plane. So why don't you tell us what is your company, what do you do, and then we'll get into more
Yeah,
about who you are.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So you asked the question sort of lithium. Lithium powers technology. Every device you have, every piece of technology you have, lithium powers that as a component of that. It's used in batteries and all sorts of technology, right? That's where the name came from.
I like that.
Um, yeah, thank you. We've been around for about 20 years. It's 19 years going on 20 now. And we started as a web design and development agency on the East Coast. So for the first 8 or so years, that's what we did. And it was 2008. It was the sort of the crash of 2008 that spurred on like our transformation, right? So we were a design firm at that time doing a lot of online annual reports for agency for the Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies even, and it was thankless, horrible work. It was lucrative, but it was horrible work that nobody cared about at the end of the day. And 2008 happened, budgets dried up for that sort of thing, and it gave me an opportunity to reimagine what my company did, and that's when we pivoted into technology solutions. So what we are, that just sort of transitioning the conversation into what we do and what we are, is we're a digital transformation agency, right? Those that we build and integrate business software solutions. That's a lot of $10 words, right? And
Yeah.
what that means is we make companies more scalable and more profitable. We help them reduce risk, increase efficiency, and decrease costs, right? So that's the kind of like big picture of what we do, and we do that with software and we do that with systems and processes.
That's a big jump from web development, right? Just doing
Yeah,
websites to software integration. I mean,
yeah,
that is a whole different space. That
it
had to
is.
be frightening and challenging to make that kind of leap. And
Mm-hmm.
and when you're sitting in a box where I think this company does this, and then you
Right.
pivot into something totally different.
Yeah.
How did that transition work for you, both psychologically and then in the marketplace?
Great question. I think just like we're in an interesting time right now, right?
Yeah.
Chaos and unpredictability and sort of disaster creates opportunities, right? And that's what happened in 2008. My business evaporated.
Mm,
We counted on revenue yearly. It was like clockwork. The SEC filings had to get done. People needed their online annual reports. Pfizer, Stanley Black and Decker, all these major companies, Memorial Sloan Kettering, all these major companies, we would do their online annuals, right? The budgets went from, well, it doesn't matter. The budgets went from really good numbers to like next to nothing for those projects. So our revenue, that was really clockwork, it just evaporated. So I had to really think about how to pivot very quickly. And it was also a great time for me. I was getting antsy. So I was based in Brooklyn at the time and the East Coast, and I was getting antsy on the East Coast, and I really wanted to get out to California. It was really a quality of life kind of decision for me. So a
yep.
number of factors all happened at the same time, and I was like, you know what? Now is as good a time as any to reimagine my business and to really lean into kind of lifestyle design. And that's how I ended up in California. And the way I rethought the business was, well, we were building technology. A lot of the things we built required back end software to manage, let's say, multiple languages. We did a lot of product launches and things for, let's say, Glade or Johnson and Johnson, and they had a launch in 20 languages. So we needed to build in technology on the back end that allowed that sort of stuff to happen. So we already had, and we did some really complex web dev work as well that went beyond just the sort of brochure website design.
Yep.
So we already had the technology chops in the back end work. And I thought, what better way to use what I really enjoyed, which was building solutions. And that muscle wasn't getting really flexed in the kind of marketing and design side of thing for me. So I thought, what better way to actually solve business problems than to solve business problems with the skill that my company had, which was technology solutions.
Wow. It's just a bold move. It's so impressive because what happens in disaster is so many people sit paralyzed, right? And they wait for the tornado to end. And you uprooted your life. You uprooted your lifestyle. You uprooted what you do. And what I appreciate so much about you and the way you talk about clients is you assess, I have a capability of doing this, but you start to see that need. And identifying that software piece that helps them run is a critical component, and then pivoting towards helping them. We do the same thing in our business, and that's really what motivates us. And it becomes more about the change you make for them than it does the stuff you do for them, right? And it's a totally different way to look at it. Talk a little bit about what that experience has been like, moving away from just a product you deliver to delivering a product that actually transforms what they do.
To a product that delivers, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I like that. I like that idea and that thought, and talk about that a little bit. I suppose where I felt I was unfulfilled in running a company that didn't really provide real world solutions to problems. To actually doing something now that solves business problems that help them accomplish their goals, right? So that was the first transition, 2008 to 2010 or so, building technology solutions that really solved problems. And the sort of next step, the next sort of iteration of that over the last number of years is working with companies that actually solve problems that I care about, or move the needle forward, or move the needle, I suppose, on issues that I feel are important to the world, right? So we're helping those companies by solving their technology problems, and in turn, those companies are solving problems in the world that kind of matter, right?
I love that.
And that's the sort of yardstick I use on, like, are we doing a good job? Are we accomplishing both of those things? Are we really helping a company move faster, provide a better service to their customers, be more effective, more efficient with their resources? And does that company do good in the world in some way, shape, or form? Right?
It's a great perspective. This is Real Talk with Ryan. We're here with our special guest, Michael Trezza from Lithium. I want to dig on that a little bit because, we struggle with the same, and struggle is not the right word, but we analyze the same thing, is we want to do business with people who make a difference. Yeah. And a lot of businesses will do products, and they try to take those products and then make enough from those products to go do something. And your perspective is a little different in that I want to do something for people that do more. And by doing that, you're contributing in a much more meaningful way. It's almost like this idea of one to many, and then many to thousands, or many to millions.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of guests on so far who have a very purpose-driven focus. And I love that they coordinate with the community and they think through why they exist and what's valuable to them, and how that message should translate into the way that they do business. And when I think about that, we've always asked them this question, and it helps me as I evaluate how do we establish the criteria. What is the criteria you use to identify this is the kind of client that we want to work with? This is the kind of good we expect them to do. What is that filter for you?
That's a great question. And that actually forces me to really think about it on a deeper level. I don't think it's been quantified. Well, I'll just be transparent. I haven't quantified it into a set of values that I kind of require a client to uphold for us to do business with them. a lot of it in my role at the company is business development. So I'm usually the front line. I'm always the
Right.
front line, like interacting with clients. And I would say it's a gut level thing
Yeah.
in 99% of the cases. And then like, okay, is the business actually something that is, um, okay, we wouldn't do business with a tobacco company. Let's put it
Hmm.
that way, right? Beyond things like that that I feel are actively doing like harm to society, it would have to be it would be subjective, and a lot of it
Yeah.
comes down to just the how the company is run and organized. There's been projects that we've turned down because I felt like management wasn't doing a great job of, let's say, like empowering their people to make good decisions, or the culture just felt really trashy at the organization, for lack of a better word, or something along those lines, where it's just been a gut. Like, I don't think this is the company that I want to play with for 12 months in a project. And our
Right.
projects tend to be long-term engagements.
Right.
10, 12, 18 months, we could be working on like a core project, and then hopefully a lot longer for maintenance work, right? So every new engagement, I have to kind of get a sense of, do I want to play nicely with you for a long time?
Right.
And can we build a relationship? Do we have the same values? Do we care about kind of like the local economy and local situation? Do we care about problem solving? Are you just in this business to make money? And if so, maybe we're not a great fit necessarily.
Yeah. No,
So I'd say
and
it's a
I think a
gut.
lot of us get there organically. Um,
Yeah.
the same thing applies to us when we look at that same filter.
Hmm.
Ultimately, we want clients who want to see the world a better place, having how than they started with it, right? They want to make a
Absolutely.
positive
Yeah.
impact both on the people that work in their organizations and the clients they serve. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if they're doing hazardous waste removal to uh, doing ice cream sales on the corner,
Yeah.
right? They
Absolutely.
all have a difference that they can make in the community and have a sense
Yeah.
of purpose greater than just the product they deliver.
Sure.
And that's always
Yeah.
interesting to us. But I also find, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this piece, is sometimes you start to put that out there and those cause-based, purpose-based people,
Mhm.
thoughtful-based people start finding you,
Yeah. Certainly.
right?
Certainly. Yeah. I
How
definitely
has that
find
played
that.
out for you?
Oh, you see that all the time, and it's just a matter of like synchronicity, I think, is the word for it, right? When you put that out into the world, I think it kind of comes back to you. You and I are
Yeah.
having conversations around this sort of thing. It's going to attract people that think like us in certain ways, and that just brings those people into our kind of our sphere, right? That's worked out fantastic. Some of our best projects and best clients and best relationships have come through other relationships that have been valuable. And I think when I built this company, when I reimagined this company in 2010, it was really around then when I settled out here. It was 2008 that I moved. 2010 was when I kind of rebuilt the company. And I thought about what our core values should be, and they're very. And we didn't have core values in 2001 when I started the company. I was a kid. I started a company, and it worked. Look at
Yeah.
that. And then I kind of got more serious about like building a business. Um, and one of our core values, our top one, is measurable impact. That's our first one. So the solutions we provide, it's not a win if it doesn't actually impact the business in a measurable, very clear way, right? And I
Yes.
sort of, I guess, in some loose way, I use our core values to judge, to determine whether we're a good fit with either like networking people or with other businesses. Positive change, energizing collaboration, encouraging and enabling growth, and the fifth one is believing in magic. And
Believing in magic.
believe in magic. Yeah, that's our fifth core value. Um,
How did you come up with that? I like that idea,
yeah,
but boy, that's broad.
it's very broad, but it's also razor sharp if you think so. The way I picture that working is if you can't look around the world and just be in awe at what we've got going on. If you just drove across 17 states, 18
Yep.
states, right?
Yep.
And what an incredible thing you got to see these ecosystems change. I mean, what an incredible thing you got to see. If you can't drive into Yosemite Valley and just be stunned into silence, then we're not going to be friends. You know what I mean? That's sort of what I picture believing in magic is. There's something, and I don't mean God or religion or anything like that. I just mean there is something so powerful about this place, this little ball that we're spinning around on. If you have to acknowledge that, and I want all of my people that work with me to kind of feel that presence as well. That there is something so cool about this world, and what we're doing on some level is so meaningless. Like, building
Right.
software for companies is so meaningless on that level, right? But
Yeah.
we're impacting people's lives, and we're solving problems, and we're enabling people to spend less time in front of their computer and be with their kids if what we do works, right? And there's some magic to what we all bring to the table, and I want people to be able to just to feel that sort of idea.
It's funny you frame it that way. I've never heard anyone frame it that way, but I like to think of some of our products, which are very different than yours, right? We're
Mhm.
doing back office accounting and marketing and really complete back office solution item work, right? Doing the
Yeah,
stuff that makes business
yeah,
function, right? And I think of it as a little bit of magic. Really, it should just be, how does your phone work? I don't know. It's magic, right?
right,
How do
right,
the bills get paid?
totally.
I'm not really sure. It's magic. How does
Yep,
payroll get
yep,
processed? I don't know. It's magic. It just happens and
exactly.
it's fine. And
Yeah,
and that's an interesting way to look at
yeah,
it. It certainly puts a positive slant on some of the stuff that you and I both have to do and our staff has to do every day. I,
totally.
I
It can
love
get
the way
really
you frame it.
dry, and it can get really dry, and like you can devolve into like an IT conversation and get very technical and things. But
Yeah.
that's not what people are buying. When I'm
All
sitting
right.
with a client, and they're like, I wish there was a solution for X, or I wish we could figure out a way to do X. I've got a magic wand on my side of the table, and you know what? We can do that as long as your budget and your time frame of fit it.
Right.
We can make that happen. There's rarely a situation with technology that we can't get something done or solve a business problem. Um,
Right.
so that's like
Well,
another
man,
component of it.
it certainly puts a positive slant. A lot of times you and I are presented with opportunities in our business coming out of conflict or coming out of struggles, or
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
broken and I'm suffering and I need help. And so it starts in a very negative light. Not that we're not delivering a positive service, but the
right, right.
experience someone is having is generally coming out of some sequence or format of pain.
Yeah, especially
And so we
now,
meet
right?
that pain and try to address it. But I like that positive slant on, let me wave the wand and fix it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that antidote that people are looking
Hmm.
for. I like that
Yeah,
perspective. This is Real Talk with
yeah.
Ryan. Michael Trezza from Lithium's our guest. If you have any questions, the chat box is open, the Q&A is open. Please feel free to use any of that. I work the questions in. I'll leave time for questions, live questions at the end. Um, I want to go back a little bit. You started talking in that last sequence about that transition and right, identifying and finding those things that value and developing those values. Take us to the being an owner, right, and starting a business and then transforming your business. I've
Sure.
asked several of our guests this question, and I'm always interested in their personal experience because you can learn so much from what other people have done, both in what to repeat and what not to do.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the things in business that you didn't that happened to you that you wouldn't have expected to happen in business? Things that are barriers
Hmm.
and obstacles that are just harder than anyone really understands.
Oh wow. I wish I had time to prepare an answer for that. That's a great question. I guess an easy answer, that just the first one that comes to mind, are when the rug is pulled out. Like
Yeah,
what
good
happened
one.
in 2008, and
Yes.
what happened 5 months ago, pretty
Mhm.
much. When the rug is pulled out, as a business owner, it's really easy to feel kind of very lonely in
Yes.
that place and not know who to ask for. Unless you've got a peer group or things like that, it's difficult to know what to do next, right? It's also
Yes.
difficult to stay in the creative mindset.
Hmm.
Anxiety is the antidote to creativity, right? So if you're in the stressed side of like the kind of brain, you're not thinking creative, you're not problem solving and looking
Yes.
for ways through.
Well,
So
that's my follow-up question. When you say
yeah,
that, and you kind of answered it before I asked it, but you know, a lot of times businesses look at things like what's happened recently and what happened in 8, and my whole life is really framed around some things that happened in 2001, things that happened in 2008, particularly in 8, where it was just a black
Yeah.
hole that never had a bottom, or didn't
Right.
feel like it was going to have a bottom.
Yeah.
And you start to feel like things happen to you,
Mm.
right? This is all
Yeah.
something directed at you, right? And
Right.
this is
Right.
not
Right.
fair, and I couldn't control this, and this is not how it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. And you get this very
That's
lonely,
familiar. Yeah.
self-loathing. I should have prepared, and what could I have done? And it
Mm-hmm.
can be frankly very
It could
depressing.
spiral. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you work through that for you, where you
Great
see
question.
through the other side? What
Yeah.
is it that you do? Because I think we can all learn something from how you've gotten there.
Yeah. I mean, well, I mean, I don't know if you can see this wall of guitars and music behind me. That's one of the things I do. I play music. I play music. I paint. I don't think there's any better way. I meditate every day, and I have since I was in elementary school, which is pretty weird, and that's a different conversation. But I don't think there's any better way to stay in touch with like to be present than to play music, paint,
Hmm,
rock climb, do something that forces you to stay present, right?
right.
And when you and meditate, when you do that, when you get in a practice of that, it kind of shuts out all the noise and it lets you access that sort of creative potential that's in all of us.
Yes.
That most people just don't access often enough. You know, it's so easy to get into scrolling your Twitter feed or Instagram and Facebook and just have all, especially today, all this noise is coming at us, and we have to work so hard intentionally to block it out so that we can stay present. We can recognize what we're feeling in our state, and then work to solve the problems that we're coming up against, and being creative. So for me,
I
the
really
quick
like
answer
that.
is staying present.
Yeah, you're so right about how music can do that. I mean, I think unconsciously I do the same thing.
Mm.
If I could walk away and turn my camera just to my right, you'd see a couple guitars hanging in
There
there
you
too.
go. There you go.
And one of the challenges that I have, and I know our listeners both on the call today and those that'll listen later would have this question: to be self-aware enough to know I need to get someplace for to be present, right? I need
Mm-hmm.
to stop a spiral. Those have been hard lines for me to identify until
Oh
I've
yeah.
caused so much damage to myself and those around
Yeah.
me
Yeah. I
that the
know the
path
feeling.
back is so much more difficult than if I'd have just identified it early. How do you identify those triggers and say, oh, wait a second, I got to go someplace or to my place or to my spot
Mhm.
where I can reset? What do you do?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it took me a long time to get there. So I don't want to sound like some sort of sage or guru or anything like this, but it took me a long time. It took me therapy and all sorts of things. So I'm from Jersey. Okay, when it
Yep.
really comes down to it, I had a wicked temper when I was younger, and I had a lot of work to do to get to a place where I'm present and in a creative space. Right. It took me a long time to get there. What I do and what sort of spurred that on for me was the feeling that I used to get. And I've been a rock climber since I was a little kid, and I was in love with nature since I was a little kid, outdoor climbing. Um, and the feeling that I got when I was outdoors and around rocks and mountains and things like that, it made me recognize pretty quickly that there is something special about being in that state, that the state of like awe and wonder and right, and I wanted to be there more. So I started looking for things that would provide that. How do I access that? Right. This the other view is all these books over there. A lot of those are personal development books. Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you break through all the garbage and all the noise in your head, all the self talk, and cut that out and reprogram your brain to be creative and to be positive and to like find abundance. So I don't know if that answers the question.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Michael, this has been great. I really appreciate everything. Your contribution you making to getting through that process has just been fantastic. I've learned a lot for me
Right.
personally already. This is Real Talk with Ryan. Michael Trezza from Lithium's our guest. Again, you guys feel free to use the chat box. I'll work questions in. We'll open up to live questions at the end. Um, Where are you at now? You and I talked very early on, like I said at the very beginning, the beginning of this shutdown,
Yeah.
about, well, how do
Yeah.
we pivot? What do we do? And both of us are in middles of pivot and
Mhm.
and working through things. And earlier you discussed these 12-month or 18-month of really long-term relationships with clients on these projects.
Yeah.
And I know, and you can echo this, when you have when your duration of your project is that long, your sales cycle can also be very long,
Yeah,
just to
certainly.
get to a spot where they say, yes, I'm going to go with you. They got to think
Mhm.
about it. They got to process, they got to budget for it.
Yeah.
They got to plan. I mean, changing software is a difficult task under normal circumstances for businesses.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what are things like now that you're 4 or 5 months in and you've worked through another pivot? How are things going? How are you feeling? What advice can you give us on all of us who are going through personal pivots or business pivots to say, I can relate. Here's I'm there too. What's happening with you?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening with me. I don't know if I could give it advice, but maybe it can turn into something like that. But so one of the early things that we saw was, of course, remote enablement. Companies starting to like shift to remote work. That's
Yes.
I feel like that's sort of like cliche now in the tech space on some level. I'm happy to talk to that point. Every company is needing to solve the remote work kind of component right now,
Yes.
and just using Zoom or signing up for a Zoom account doesn't make a company a remote company, right? There's a lot of layers and levels and subtleties of
Right.
systems, processes, and procedures and all that stuff underneath there. And that's something that we've done a lot of work in over the years without even realizing it.
Right.
So we can help with. But one of the really interesting things that we're sort of leaning into right now, which I didn't see coming and I didn't expect, and I'm really surprised and excited by, is continuity planning. Right. So COVID hit. A lot of people, a lot of business owners and management started to realize, hey, geez, we've got a whole organization run on a brittle software solution that works fine, but only Danny in IT knows how it works over there. And what happened if Danny in IT got sick? How do we continue to operate? And so our phone's been ringing for things like that, right? And we've gotten probably 6 calls in the last 2 weeks alone for this sort of situation where it's like one or two guys that have built this whole like internal software piece, and now an organization is coming to us to help them, to help document it, to
Mm,
help kind of build a continuity plan. Like, what happens if these people, the one or two IT guys, are gone, can't work anymore? And then how do we then scale this and make it more reliable and and safe? So eliminating risk. That's sort of like the thing that I'm seeing right now.
nice.
Yeah.
How is your staff? Because a change in both the requirements of the clients, the stress the clients have over the urgency, because
Hmm.
this is a different kind of urgency. I've got someone at home and they weren't home yesterday and now they're home today. I got to
Right.
solve it
Right.
today. My software
Yeah.
used to work. Now it doesn't because they're home and they can't come back because the government. I
That's,
mean, there's just
yeah.
so much
Yeah.
happening so fast. How do you organizationally work that in so your staff can consume that? Because that's overwhelming to them as well. What are the
Yeah.
things you're doing internally to solve for that?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a two-part answer to that. So the first one is the urgency really hasn't changed from what we've seen, only because
Okay.
for every client, any issue is a fire,
Right.
and any issue is always a fire, especially in the things that we build, right? So
Right.
we build critical software components that businesses use to run on. If the,
Right.
if those go down, like let's say it's a construction project management platform that we build. If that's down for an hour or two, that's a problem. If it's down for a day, that's disastrous. That's bad, right? So we've always had to be prepared to handle that sort of urgency, right? So this new urgency is nothing new for us. Um, the second part to that, the second part of the answer is the way we solve for that is by having really, really tight systems and processes ourselves, right? Everything we do is documented. There's checklists for everything. Everything is systemized. It flows into ticket management systems and project management systems. Communication is all logged. We try to stay out of email as much as possible. We eat what we cook when it really comes down to it, right? the solutions that we try to build for our clients, we've built them for ourselves first, to make sure that we're scalable. We've been a remote company since 2011, 2010 and a half, 2011. So we know how to rock that, and then we've done it for a really long time. Yeah, does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is tight systems.
Yeah. I'll take you to a personal item, and if you guys have any questions or want to chat anything in, feel free. How are you doing? You talked about going to that safe place or going to that, but we talked about escaping the stress. We talk about the pivots and the changes and this high energy and this believing in magic concept, which I love. But in this environment, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. If you're asking about me, Michael, personally,
yes.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I honestly, the most difficult part of this for me is not being able to. So I've got a 3-year-old daughter, right? Not being able to have her visit my parents, who are all on the East Coast, right? So we haven't been there since Christmas. Usually we go like 3 times a year back east, and that's been the most difficult part for me. It's been, I don't know, 8 months or so since we've been there, and we're way overdue for a trip, and we don't know if even by Christmas it's kind of like safe enough to fly, right? Or at least we've got a lot of great grandparents even. So that's the most difficult thing for us. Beyond that, I would say we're great. I'm getting a lot more time with my daughter. It was sort of like forced upon us, having preschool kind of taken out of the equation. But my wife and I we built a great schedule. She's about as organized as I am. We built a great schedule. We kick it back and forth, and we're making it work. And our daughter's never been happier. My wife is thriving. I'm kind of built for this sort of thing. Like personally, I can be extroverted, but I recharge. I'm an introvert completely. So I'm built for this sort of thing, to be in my space, and this is my studio office. To be in here as often as I am now makes me very happy. I have got no problems with this. Cutting out like
That's
networking
great.
events and that stuff, I'm good with that. So I'm doing great right now personally.
Well, that's so exciting to hear. It's so inspirational to identify someone who's in a business, who's had to pivot, who's dealing with this, and be so optimistic. It's inspiring. It's inspiring to me, and
Thanks.
I can learn things from that. So thank you for sharing those components and those pieces. Absolutely. Because I think there's takeaways all over the place for anyone who's watching and listening. Again, this is Real Talk with Ryan. I'm here with Michael Trezza from Lithium. Excited to have you as a guest. Thank you for everything you've shared. I have one last question, and we'll open up for Q&A for you. So I want to say what's next, but we already kind of know where you're at. And so what I'm curious about more than anything at this point is, do you, when you look at a sense of community and the improvements you make, you talked about in your business that everything you do has to have some measurable level of value or success, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you measure whether or not the work you're doing meets that criteria? Or how do you know, hey, I've hit that threshold, I've met that target, this is what I'm measuring for you and for Lithium? I think about it for me, and I say, what does it take for me to say that was a good day? I left today better than I was yesterday. Mm-hmm. What are the components that happen for you in those measurements to say
on a project
we're leaving the world better than when we found it?
Yeah, we at the beginning of every project, we actually define internally and externally success metrics for that project, right? So it could be a smooth rollout of a software platform with 0 glitches or something along those lines. It could be something about even like this solution, if implemented properly, saves this company a certain amount of time so that their people can be freed up to do more creative work or something along those lines. We kind of set up, and some of them are more objective and some are more subjective, but we set up internal and external success metrics before kicking off a project. So that, and that's as much for the client as it is for us as well. So the internal ones are for us, the external ones are for the client. So we'll share those and collaborate on those with the client up front. Like what
So the
to you
client
makes this a successful project?
the clients is part of that discussion around this is
Yeah.
what success is going to look like. Oh, nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, and not just feel like, I see it. If you engage a client in that sort of discussion early on, they get sort of recruited into our mindset in a different way, right?
Mm.
We're not selling IT networking stuff. We're selling solutions to business problems, and we want people to be creative and to feel like they're partners with us, because they've got to bear their souls to us. A CEO, a business owner, management has to bear their souls to us and tell us really what's wrong so we can fix it. If they kind of sugarcoat things, or if they don't really get into the weeds with us, we're not going to be able to solve the real problems. So we want to get into those kind of like messy, sticky conversations about what's not working. And the way, and at the end of those conversations, we can kind of turn it around and say, okay, well, what if this project, if you could wave a magic wand, what's the win? I mean, how does this end up great for you guys, right? And that becomes our sort of like guidepost. Well, let's get as close to that or beyond it.
I like that so much because it's so easy in the process for both you as an executor, your staff as executors, and the client who's consuming it to forget what the win is in the first place.
Totally. And you get mired in the details about, well, this pixel is out of place, or this, or when you click on this, the link doesn't work. Okay, that may be the case, but let's refocus on what we're solving here, and let's be collaborative again, because it's easy to get off track.
Yeah, but it also allows you, we talk about 3 levels of information, right? The way people consume information. The first one is it's wrong, no matter what. If it surprises them, it's like my utility bill at home. I get it, and it's higher than I thought, and I'm like, well, they must have done, SDG&E must have read my meter wrong, right? Which is almost never the case. That's your first response. The second one is, oh, whose fault it is? My daughter must have, left, the lights on, or left something, or somebody's fault. And then the third is, okay, well, actually, what are we going to do about this?
Right.
When there's mistakes made on both sides, it's so easy to get distracted away from the goal onto the mistakes. And if we're all pulling the same direction towards what that ultimate success metric is, it's so much easier to overcome those, because you're living in a state of, what are we going to do about this? How do we get closer? Hey, don't we remember where we were? Look how much progress we made. Yeah, this is a bump, but it's overcomable. We're in this with you. I like that as a rallying point. It's a really interesting concept.
And if you kind of go into projects together as partners and not as a client vendor kind of modality, I think things work much better.
Yes.
Communication is less confrontational. It's less kind of salesy. I'm not trying to sell anybody on any solutions. I'm presenting solutions. If they fit, great. If they don't, let's come up with better solutions.
Right.
Sort of thing,
I really like that. Words of wisdom, ideas of being positive around chaos. Michael, I couldn't. Such great content. Thank you so much for what you are doing in the community, for the products that you're creating for businesses who do good in the world, and just for putting out some really lessons that we can all take from things you've done well and things that you've made mistakes on and improved on. Great today. Really, thank you for being here.
Awesome.
Thank you for being our guest. Michael Trezza from Lithium. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was great being here as well, Ryan. It's good speaking with you always.
Thank you.
You bet.